The galaxy had been at peace for centuries. Empires rose and fell, alliances were formed and broken, but for the most part, everything was predictable. That was, until the Zorath came. Xantros, a beautiful world on the edge of the galaxy, was not a place of great importance to most. It wasn't a center of commerce or military power, but it was a peaceful world full of hard-working people. The inhabitants had built their society on the principles of cooperation and mutual respect. They had no reason to fear the stars above. That was until the Zorath came. The Zorath were an empire that valued only power. They conquered without mercy, leaving destruction in their wake. The galaxy's other species knew of their reputation. The Zorath had crushed planet after planet, one after another, without ever showing signs of stopping. They ruled through fear and military might, and anyone who dared resist them was quickly wiped out. Xantros had been a target. The Zorath arrived without warning, sending their massive warships into orbit and their armies to the surface. The people of Xantros were ill-prepared for such an attack. Despite their advanced technology, they were no match for the sheer force and ruthlessness of the Zorath. A message was sent out, a desperate cry for help. But as the days passed and the communication systems flickered with static, it became clear that no one was coming. The leaders of Xantros waited in vain for a response. They contacted every known galactic government, every star system they could reach, but no one answered. The galaxy's great powers were busy with their own affairs, unwilling to risk their forces in a far-off corner of the galaxy. The Galactic Council, a group of representatives from the various systems, convened to discuss Xantros' request. The council members debated for weeks. The Zorath were powerful, they knew that. Many feared that stepping in to help Xantros could provoke the Zorath into turning their wrath on the rest of the galaxy. It was a risk no one was willing to take. The idea of defending a small, unimportant planet seemed foolish to the council. It wasn't worth the cost of human life or military resources. Earth, too, was silent. The world that once prided itself on fighting for justice was nowhere to be found. Captain Marcus Hale was not a man who sat idly by while others suffered. A decorated officer in Earth's fleet, Hale had been serving as the commander of Earth's battle group stationed in a distant sector of the galaxy. He had heard of the attack on Xantros, and he could not ignore the cry for help. To him, it didn't matter that the planet wasn't a strategic target. It didn't matter that the Galactic Council had turned its back on the people of Xantros. They needed help, and no one was coming to their aid. Hale stood in the command center of the Eagle's Wrath, Earth's most advanced warship, a symbol of humanity's power. The ship was sleek, powerful, and filled with the latest military technology. His crew of seasoned soldiers, engineers, and officers stood at their posts waiting for orders. Hale was a man of action, not of words. He turned to his executive officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kane. "We're going," Hale said, his voice steady and calm, as if he was simply making a routine decision. "We'll answer their call." Lieutenant Kane, always sharp and observant, looked at Hale. "Sir, with all due respect, the Zorath are no joke. The council said it would be suicide to intervene. We don't even know if we can make it there in time." Hale's face remained hard, but there was a glint in his eyes, a determination that was undeniable. "We can't just let them suffer, Sarah. We've got the power, and we've got the resolve. If no one else will show up, then we will. The people of Xantros deserve a chance." The decision was made. Earth's fleet, though small compared to the Zorath's forces, would leave immediately. The Eagle's Wrath would lead the charge, with several support ships accompanying it. The journey to Xantros would take days, and they would be entering a battle that might already be lost. But Hale knew that if they didn't act, the consequences would be even worse. In the briefing room, Hale addressed his crew. "We're going into the heart of enemy territory. The Zorath are not like the enemies we've faced before. They are ruthless, but they are not invincible. We'll fight for Xantros because we fight for what is right. We are humanity's last hope for this planet, and we will not back down." The crew of the Eagle's Wrath stood silent, their faces grim but resolute. They were the ones chosen to do the impossible. They were the ones who would carry the burden of Earth's legacy. No one else had come to answer the call, but humanity would be there, As the fleet began its journey, Hale sat in his captain's chair, staring at the star map. Xantros was still a long way off, but time was running out for the colony. Every minute that passed was another minute the Zorath could use to destroy everything. The pressure weighed heavily on him, but Hale knew there was no turning back. Sarah Kane approached and stood by his side. "Captain, do you ever wonder if we're making a mistake? If we're walking into a trap that could destroy everything we've built?" Hale looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "No, Lieutenant. We're doing what's right, that's all that matters." As Earth's fleet cruised deeper into enemy territory, the feeling of impending danger grew stronger. No one knew exactly what they would face when they arrived at Xantros, but one thing was certain. Humanity was there, and they would fight for the colony until their last breath. The Zorath may have ruled with fear, but humanity would stand against them with courage. When no one else showed up, humanity would be there. This is part 1 of the story, setting up the crisis on Xantros and humanity's decision to intervene. Let me know if you'd like to make any adjustments or move to the next part. Mini Yoi. As the Eagle's Wrath and its accompanying fleet left the safety of the well-known space lanes, the vastness of the galaxy stretched before them. The stars were distant points of light, indifferent to the mission the humans were embarking on. To the rest of the galaxy, Xantros might have been just another unimportant world, but to the crew of Earth's fleet, it was a mission of honor, a mission to prove that humanity could not, and would not, turn its back on the innocent. Captain Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of the Eagle's Wrath, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. It was quiet, too quiet for the task ahead. The crew moved with purpose, each person well aware of the risk they were taking. The Zorath Empire was ruthless and well-established. For the humans, this was more than a rescue operation. It was a statement to the galaxy that humanity, no matter how small it seemed, would never stand by while others suffered. "Captain," came the calm voice of Lieutenant Sarah Kane, his second in command. "We're about to cross into uncharted space. We'll be closer to Xantros soon, but it's still going to take us at least 3 days to get there. Are we prepared for the worst?" Hale turned to face her, the weight of his decision settling more heavily with each passing hour. "We don't have a choice, Sarah. The people of Xantros are counting on us. I'd rather face the worst knowing we tried than live with the guilt of doing nothing. Prepare the crew. We can't afford to waste time." Kane nodded, her expression hardening with the same resolve that Hale had. She had been with him through countless missions, but this one felt different. This wasn't just another military operation. It was a fight for survival, for a world that had been abandoned by everyone else. She trusted Hale with her life, and now she would trust him with the lives of those on Xantros. As the days passed, the ship sailed deeper into the unknown. The crew settled into their routines, preparing for whatever lay ahead. Officers ran drills, soldiers practiced maneuvers, and engineers ensured the ship's systems were operating at full capacity. But despite their efforts to stay busy, there was an undercurrent of tension that no one could deny. The looming threat of the Zorath was ever present, and there was no guarantee that Earth's fleet would be able to make it in time to save Xantros. In the quiet moments, Hale would often find himself in the observation deck staring at the stars. The vast emptiness of space was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It reminded him of how fragile humanity was, how small Earth seemed when compared to the vastness of the galaxy. Yet it also reminded him of why they had to fight. Earth had always been the underdog, the one no one took seriously. But time and time again, humanity had shown that it was capable of defying the odds. This mission would be no different. He was interrupted by a voice over the intercom. "Captain Hale, we've received an encrypted transmission from the Xantros system. They're still holding on, but their defenses are weakening. They need us now, more than ever." Hale's heart sank. He knew that time was running out, but hearing it confirmed made the reality of the situation hit him like a ton of bricks. Xantros wasn't just fighting for its survival anymore. It was fighting against the overwhelming power of the Zorath, And they were losing. "We're almost there," Hale muttered under his breath. "Hold on, Xantros, we're coming." Meanwhile, on the ground, the people of Xantros were doing everything they could to survive. The Zorath had already taken most of the major cities, and their forces were closing in on the last strongholds. The Xantros military had put up a valiant fight, but it was clear that they couldn't hold out much longer. Every day, more civilians were caught in the crossfire, their lives torn apart by the ruthless invaders. Commander Alia Varus of the Xantros military had been one of the first to send the distress signal to the galaxy. She had watched her planet burn, her people suffer, and all she could do was beg for help. The galactic powers had ignored them, turning a blind eye to the destruction that was unfolding on Xantros. When the first message from Earth came through, she had been skeptical. She didn't believe that anyone would come, not when the Council had already decided to do nothing. But now, with the situation growing desperate, she clung to the hope that Earth's fleet could make a difference. "Commander," one of her officers called out, pulling her from her thoughts. "We've detected a fleet approaching from the outer rim. It's Earth's fleet. They're here." Aaliyah's heart raced. For the first time in months, there was hope. The Earth fleet had arrived. The first wave of Earth's ships broke through the outer edge of the system, and the Zorath's long-range scanners immediately picked up the threat. A series of communication attempts were sent out, but the humans refused to back down. The Zorath would not have it easy. They had underestimated humanity once before, but they would not do so again. As the Eagle's Wrath neared the atmosphere of Xantros, Hale and his crew prepared for the final leg of the journey. "We'll make our move as soon as we arrive." No hesitation. "We hit them hard and fast," Hale instructed. "We'll show them what happens when you underestimate Earth," Sarah Kane replied, a fierce glint in her eyes. The crew was ready. They were all ready. Humanity had shown up when no one else would, and they were about to give everything to save a world they'd never met, a people they'd never known. As Earth's fleet moved closer to Xantros, Hale stood once more in the observation deck. The stars outside had begun to shift, the edge of the atmosphere drawing near. In those final moments before the battle, he allowed himself to feel the weight of the responsibility that rested on his shoulders. But there was no room for doubt, no time for fear. Humanity had come to answer the call. This second part continues. The journey of Earth's fleet as they prepare to rescue Xantros. The anticipation grows as they near the planet, and the stakes become even clearer. Let me know if you'd like any changes, or if you'd like to continue to the next part. The Eagle's Wrath entered the Xantros system, its engines humming steadily as the crew braced themselves for the unknown. The stars outside the ship's hull seemed to blur as they made their final approach, and the planet Xantros slowly grew, larger on the navigation screen. But the sight of the planet was far from welcoming. The once lush and peaceful world now appeared marred, scarred by the relentless assault of the Zorath forces. Captain Marcus Hale stood in front of the main observation window, his hands clasped behind his back. The crew had been quiet for the past hour, their attention focused on their tasks. No one spoke. They all knew that the next few hours would decide everything. "Status report, Lieutenant Kane," Hale asked, his voice steady, though the tension in the air was palpable. Kane looked up from the console in front of her. "We've entered the outer orbital range, Captain. There are at least 4 Zorath capital ships in orbit plus several smaller warships patrolling. They haven't noticed us yet, but they will soon. We need to make our move before they have time to regroup." "Good," Hale replied, his gaze never leaving the planet. "We don't have the luxury of time. We'll hit them fast and hard. Let's show them what happens when you mess with Earth." The command room was filled with the low hum of activity as each crew member prepared for the battle ahead. It was clear to everyone aboard the ship that this wasn't just a military operation. It was a fight for survival, a fight to prove that humanity could hold its own against the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Hale turned back to Kane, his mind already working through the plan. "Once we make contact, we'll disable their communications first. We need to stop them from sending reinforcements. Then we hit their weapon systems. The longer they stay operational, the more time they'll have to retaliate. Keep the pressure on them, Lieutenant." "We're ready, Captain," Kane confirmed. "I've got the tactical team on standby. They know what to do." As the Eagle's wrath closed in on Xantros, the crew remained focused, each person operating with quiet determination. But the closer they got, the more Hale's mind raced. This was the moment they had been training for. The moment they would either succeed or fail. There would be no second chances. The first Zorath ship appeared on their radar, its massive form blocking out the stars. The ship was an imposing sight, a symbol of the Zorath's overwhelming power. Its hull was a dull, gray covered in layers of armor designed to absorb the impact of enemy fire. The Zorath warship seemed like an impenetrable fortress in space, but Hale knew better. He had faced impossible odds before, and he was determined not to back down now. "Captain, we've been detected," Kane called from the communications console. "They're locking on to us. We don't have much time before they open fire." Hale's pulse quickened, but his face remained calm. "Brace for impact, but don't hesitate. Hit them before they get a chance to strike first." "Firing in 3, 2, 1, Kane called, her finger hovering over the trigger. The ship shuddered as the main guns of the Eagle's wrath fired, the powerful beams of energy cutting through the vast distance between them and the Zorath warship. The first salvo hit the Zorath ship's shield, causing a brilliant flash of light. But the shields held firm. The Zorath ship retaliated immediately, launching a barrage of missiles in their direction. "Evade! Full speed ahead!" Hale ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. The crew scrambled to execute the evasive maneuvers as the ship veered to the side, narrowly avoiding the incoming missiles. The Eagle's wrath fired another volley, this time hitting the Zorath warship's weapons array. Sparks flew and the ship's weapon systems went dark. The Zorath ship staggered, its shields flickering. "Good shot, Lieutenant," Hale said, nodding approvingly. But the Zorath were not easily deterred. Within seconds, the remaining warships began to move into position, surrounding Earth's fleet. The battle had only just begun. On the surface of Xantros, the civilians and soldiers watched helplessly as the sky above them darkened with the shadow of the enemy. The Zorath forces were relentless, pushing the remaining survivors into smaller and smaller territories. But hope had not died. When the transmission from Earth arrived, Commander Aaliyah Varys could hardly believe it. She had sent countless messages begging for help, but no one had responded. Earth had. And now, Earth's fleet was in orbit. Aaliyah stood in the command center of the Xantros military base, her eyes fixed on the large screen in front of her. The enemy was closing in, but she could feel something shift in the air. She turned to her officers. "We're not giving up. Earth is here. We've got a chance." The room was silent for a moment, and then one of her officers spoke up. "Commander, they're making their move. Earth's fleet is engaging the Zorath head-on. The battle has begun." Back on the Eagle's wrath, Hale watched the chaos unfolding on his screen. He could see the Zorath ship circling, preparing for another attack. But Earth's fleet was not backing down. The Eagle's wrath fired again, its guns ripping into the Zorath ships with surgical precision. "Captain, we've taken some damage to our aft shields," Kane reported. "We can't take many more hits like that." "We've got this, Lieutenant," Hale replied. "Keep the pressure on. Let's make sure they know who they're dealing with." The Eagle's wrath fired once more. Its shots finding their mark. The Zorath ships began to retreat, but the humans did not let up. They pursued, relentless in their determination to break the Zorath's grip on Xantros. The Zorath forces had underestimated Earth's fleet, and now they were paying the price. As the Eagle's wrath continued to engage, Hale's mind was focused. He knew this was only the beginning. The Zorath would not give up so easily. But for the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of hope. Earth had shown up, and they were making a difference. Humanity had arrived when no one else would. The first encounter was over, but the battle was far from won. Hale knew the Zorath wouldn't be defeated so easily, and Earth's fleet had taken its share of hits. But in that moment, as the Eagle's wrath maneuvered through space, Hale understood something important. Humanity may have been the underdog in the eyes of the galaxy, but they had the heart, the strength, and the courage to stand against any enemy, no matter how powerful. Xantros was not lost yet, not while Earth's fleet still had the strength to fight. This third part continues the battle as Earth's fleet engages the Zorath. Humanity is starting to make its presence known, but the war is far from over. Let me know if you'd like to continue to the next part. The battle in space raged on, a chaotic dance of ships firing at each other across the vastness of space. Earth's fleet, though outnumbered, fought with a fierce determination. Captain Marcus Hale stood firm on the bridge of the Eagle's Wrath, watching the unfolding battle on the screens. His mind was sharp, calculating every move as if it were a game of chess, each piece a potential threat or opportunity. The Zorath warships, despite their superior firepower, were struggling to adapt to Earth's tactics. They were accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer strength, but humanity's military was different. Earth's fleet used speed, precision, and adaptability, pushing the Zorath forces back with every calculated move. Captain, another Zorath ship is attempting to break through our line, Lieutenant Sarah Kane called from her station. They're trying to flank us. Engage at maximum speed, Hale ordered. We won't give them a chance to regroup. The Eagle's Wrath veered sharply to the left, its engines roaring as it cut across the Zorath warship's path. The ship fired, its main weapons hitting the Zorath vessel with powerful blasts. The enemy ship's shields flared, but they were no match for the human precision. It exploded in a burst of light, its remains drifting into space. Another victory for humanity. But Hale knew that this battle was far from over. The Zorath fleet was large and powerful, and they would keep fighting until the very end. He could see their reinforcements arriving on the horizon. More warships, more firepower, and more enemies to face. Captain, Sarah said, her voice tight, with concern. We've sustained damage to our starboard thrusters. We're losing some maneuverability. Hale's eyes narrowed. The Eagle's Wrath had been built for battles like this, but even the most advanced ship could only take so much punishment. Can we still engage them? We can, Sarah replied, but it'll be slower, and we may not be able to evade incoming fire as easily. We fight anyway, Hale said, his voice unwavering. Full speed ahead and let's hit them where it hurts. On the surface of Xantros, the situation was just as grim. The Zorath forces had taken control of nearly every city, and their troops patrolled the streets, rounding up civilians and soldiers alike. Commander Aaliyah Vera stood in the ruins of the last stronghold, staring out over the battlefield. She had seen more destruction in the past few days than she had ever imagined possible. Yet despite everything, she held on to one hope, the arrival of Earth's fleet. Commander, one of her officers said, his voice filled with urgency. Earth's ships are in orbit. They've engaged the Zorath in space. Aaliyah's heart skipped a beat. She could hardly believe it. After everything, after the endless pleas for help, Earth had come through. She felt a surge of hope rise within her, even as the sound of distant explosions echoed in the background. She turned to face her team. This is our chance, she said, her voice strong. We can't let the Zorath win. Rally the troops. We're going on the offensive. Her officers nodded, and they began to mobilize the remaining Xantros forces. They had nothing left to lose, but they had everything to fight for. The people of Xantros needed their freedom, and they would not back down. Back in space, the battle was intensifying. The Zorath had regrouped, and their numbers were overwhelming. More ships arrived, their hulls bristling with weapons and shields. But Earth's fleet wasn't backing down. Captain Hale watched as the Eagle's Wrath took fire from a massive Zorath warship. The shields were holding, but the ship was beginning to tremble under the pressure. Another hit would likely bring them down. Captain, Sarah said, her voice tense. We've lost another engine. We can't maintain this pace much longer. Hale clenched his fists, but his face remained calm. How much longer do we have? Another 20 minutes. Maybe less, she replied. Hale's mind raced. They couldn't afford to wait for reinforcements. They couldn't afford to wait for anything. We have to take out their flagship, he said, his voice a quiet command. That's the heart of their fleet. If we take that down, the rest of them will fall apart. But Captain, the flagship is heavily defended, Sarah warned. If we go after it, we're risking everything. I know, Hale said, his eyes narrowing as he studied the battlefield. But we don't have a choice. We can't win this without a bold move. We've already come this far. The crew of the Eagle's Wrath worked together with precise coordination, each crew member knowing exactly what needed to be done. The tactical team fired the ship's weapons in rapid succession, targeting the Zorath flagship's weak points. The battle was fierce, but Earth's fleet was relentless. One by one, Zorath warships fell. Targeting the flagship now, Sarah said, her hands flying over the controls. The Eagle's Wrath turned sharply, lining up its shots. The weapons fired, the energy beams slashing through the void of space, striking the Zorath flagship. The flagship's shields flared and then cracked under the weight of the attack. A massive explosion tore through the ship's hull and the Zorath flagship was no more. Its massive form drifted in space, a broken shell of what it once was. The remaining Zorath ships hesitated, their crews stunned by the loss of their command ship. Earth's fleet pressed the advantage. The remaining enemy ships were scattered, their cohesion shattered. The humans had taken the heart of the Zorath fleet, and with it, their will to fight. "Yes!" Sarah exclaimed, a rare smile crossing her face. "We did it, Captain. The Zorath are retreating." Hale allowed himself a brief moment of relief, but he knew the fight wasn't truly over yet. The Zorath might retreat, but they would regroup. There would be more battles to come. However, for now, Earth's fleet had won a decisive victory. On Xantros, the ground forces fought bravely alongside Earth's military. The Xantros soldiers, inspired by the arrival of humanity's forces, pushed back the Zorath invaders. The people of Xantros were fighting not just for their homes, but for the idea that no one, no matter how small or insignificant they seemed, should ever have to face tyranny alone. Commander Alia Vera stood at the front lines, her voice rallying her troops. "We are not alone anymore. Earth is with us and we will reclaim our world." The soldiers cheered, their spirits lifted by the combined forces of Earth and Xantros. Together, they would drive the Zorath off their planet, and they would rebuild what had been destroyed. Earth had shown up when no one else would, and now they would stand side by side in victory. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. Earth had made its mark, and the galaxy would never forget that when no one else showed up, humanity was there. This fourth part continues the epic battle between Earth's fleet and the Zorath forces. Humanity's strength and determination are showcased as they strike a powerful blow to the Zorath Empire. Let me know if you'd like to proceed with the next part. The Eagle's Wrath floated in space, battered but still holding strong. The fight in the skies had been long and intense, but now, with the Zorath flagship destroyed and the remaining enemy ships scattering in retreat, Earth's fleet had won a hard-fought victory. But the cost of that victory was heavy. Captain Marcus Hale stood on the bridge, staring at the view screen where the last Zorath warship was retreating into the dark void of space. A sense of triumph filled him, but it was tempered by the grim reality of the battle. Their fleet had taken significant damage and several ships would need extensive repairs. The Eagle's Wrath itself was lucky to have held together through the storm of fire they had faced. "Captain, our engines are still operational, but we've lost several critical systems," Lieutenant Sarah Kane reported, her voice steady but filled with concern. "We'll need at least 2 days to make repairs before we can leave the Xantros system." Hale nodded. "We'll make do with what we have. We've done our part, and we've given the people of Xantros a chance to fight back. That's what matters." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, turning back to her console. On the surface of Xantros, the battle for the planet had shifted dramatically in favor of the humans and the Xantros resistance. The Zorath forces were still formidable, but their morale had taken a massive hit. The destruction of their flagship had thrown their command structure into chaos. With Earth's fleet providing air support and ground forces joining the fight, the Xantros soldiers found new hope. Commander Alia Veris watched as her troops pushed forward, fighting the Zorath wherever they could. The once desolate streets of Xantros' capital were now a battlefield, but it was a battlefield of hope. Earth soldiers alongside the Xantros defenders cleared building after building, fighting with the courage of people who had nothing left to lose. "This is it," Alia whispered to herself. "We're winning." But even as she spoke those words, She knew the true cost of the war. The people of Xantros had suffered immeasurably and countless lives had been lost. For every Zorath soldier they defeated, there was a civilian, a mother, a child, a friend, who would never return. As she led her forces through the city, Aaliyah saw the aftermath of the battle. Burned-out vehicles, destroyed buildings, and wounded soldiers were scattered across the landscape. The cost of victory was evident in every corner. She could only imagine how much more the Xantros people would have to sacrifice before this war truly ended. "Commander," one of her officers called, interrupting her thoughts. "We've cleared the eastern sector. The Zorath have retreated. We've won that part of the city." Aaliyah gave a nod, but her heart was heavy. "It's not over yet. Keep moving. We need to push them all the way out." Back in space, the Eagle's wrath had become a lifeline for Xantros. Though the immediate danger had passed, Hale knew they couldn't rest. The Zorath were not known for giving up so easily, and they would likely regroup, preparing for another strike. Earth's fleet had secured a temporary victory, but it was only one step in a long and difficult journey. "Captain," Sarah Kane spoke again, her voice filled with urgency. "We've received a transmission from the Xantros Command Center. They've asked us to assist with the ground operations. Their forces are still fighting the Zorath remnants in the southern sector. They need air support for an assault on the Zorath's final stronghold." Hale didn't hesitate. "We'll provide all the support they need. We're not leaving them until this is done." The order was given, and Earth's fleet moved into position to provide fire support for the Xantros forces. Hale could see on the monitors that the Zorath's remaining forces were concentrated in a heavily fortified stronghold on the southern edge of the capital. The Xantros soldiers had been pushing toward it for days, but the Zorath weren't giving up easily. It would be a tough fight, but with Earth's fleet there, they had a fighting chance. As the fleet prepared to provide the airstrike, Hale took a moment to reflect on the situation. Xantros had been on the brink of total destruction, and without Earth's intervention, it likely would have fallen. The galaxy might have moved on, ignoring the plight of a single insignificant world. But humanity had come, and they had made all the difference. On the ground, the assault on the Zorath stronghold began. Earth's fighter jets swooped down, launching precision strikes against the enemy's outer defenses. The explosions rocked the stronghold, shaking the ground beneath Xantros' soldiers. It was a hard, brutal fight, but humanity's resolve, paired with the fierce determination of the Xantros people, proved to be a winning combination. Commander Aaliyah Varus watched as the Xantros soldiers advanced, their firepower bolstered by Earth's air support. She could feel the weight of the moment. Victory was within reach, but there was still so much left to do. They had to end this war once and for all. The people of Xantros deserved peace. "We're almost there," Aaliyah said, her voice filled with resolve. "Push forward." Her troops surged ahead, their rifles raised high, charging toward the heart of the Zorath stronghold. With each step, the walls of the Zorath Empire crumbled. The human and Xantros forces were unstoppable. The final assault on the Zorath stronghold was intense, but the enemy was crumbling. The combination of Earth's firepower and Xantros' bravery had broken the enemy's defenses. One by one, the Zorath soldiers surrendered, retreating from the battlefield. The last remnants of their empire on Xantros were wiped out. As Aaliyah stood in the center of the destroyed stronghold, her heart swelled with pride. They had won. It wasn't just a victory on the battlefield. It was a victory for the people of Xantros, for humanity, and for everyone who had been abandoned by the galaxy. Earth had kept its promise. Back in space, Earth's fleet had completed its final mission. The Zorath had been driven off, and Xantros was free. The Eagle's wrath and its fleet had fought bravely, and though they had sustained damage, they had achieved their objective. The fight had been long and the cost had been great, but in the end, humanity had done what no one else was willing to do. Captain Hale stood on the bridge of the Eagle's wrath, looking out over the now peaceful planet. The sky above Xantros was clear, the smoke of war finally beginning to lift. "We did it," Sarah Kane said, her voice soft with relief. Hale nodded. "Yes, we did, but this isn't the end. We've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of, and we'll keep showing up when others won't. The fight for Xantros had been hard, but in the end, humanity had made a difference. And that was something no one could ever take away. This part focuses on the aftermath of the battle, the sacrifices made by both Earth and Xantros, and the final push to liberate the planet. Let me know if you'd like to proceed with the next part.